Hello and welcome back to the channel. In the summer of 1944, the British Army was fighting its way through Normandy. The hedgerows were thick, the lanes were narrow, and German armour was everywhere. British infantry needed a way to kill tanks, and the weapon they were given was the PIAT. They hated it. Not quietly, not politely. British soldiers hated the PIAT with a kind of fury usually reserved for the enemy. Veterans described it as the worst weapon they had ever been issued. Training manuals were full of complaints. Field reports were scathing. The recoil could crack a collarbone. Reloading meant lying flat on your back and pushing a 200-pound spring with both feet. The effective range against armor was so short that missing usually meant dying. And yet, 3 Victoria Crosses were awarded to men using the PIAT in combat. 3. That is more than almost any other individual weapon in the entire war. The weapon every soldier hated turned out to be the weapon that produced some of the bravest acts in British military history. This is the story of the PIAT and why the worst weapon in the Army kept saving lives. The PIAT existed because of a problem that haunted every infantry force in the Second World War. Tanks are terrifying. A single tank can destroy an entire platoon. It can crush defensive positions, shrug off small arms fire, and advance through ground that would stop infantry dead. For a soldier on foot, facing a tank with nothing but a rifle is not combat. It is execution. Every army understood this, and every army tried to give its infantry something that could fight back. The Americans developed the bazooka, a hollow tube that fired a rocket-propelled grenade. It was light, simple, and the rocket motor meant almost no recoil. A soldier could fire it from the shoulder without being knocked off his feet. The Germans developed the Panzerfaust, even simpler. A disposable tube with a massive warhead. Point it at a tank, pull the trigger, throw away the tube. Single use, but devastatingly effective. Both of these weapons used rockets or propellant charges that vented gas out the back of the tube. This eliminated recoil, but created a dangerous backblast. A bazooka could not be fired from inside a building. The flame and pressure behind the weapon would injure or kill anyone standing there. Britain took a completely different path. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Blacker was an eccentric weapons designer with an obsession. He had spent years developing something called a spigot mortar. The concept was unusual. Instead of a conventional barrel that guided a projectile, a spigot mortar used a solid steel rod that fitted inside a hollow tail on the bomb itself. A powerful spring drove the rod forward into the bomb. The impact ignited a small propellant charge in the bomb's tail. The bomb launched off the spigot and flew toward the target. No rocket, no backblast, no flame shooting out the rear. On paper, this was brilliant. A soldier could fire the PIAT from inside a room, from a trench, from behind a wall, from any enclosed space. The only thing that came out of the weapon was the bomb itself. This was a genuine tactical advantage. In the tight hedgerows of Normandy, in the ruined buildings of Italian cities, in the narrow streets of Dutch towns, the ability to fire from cover without backblast was invaluable. But the spring that made this possible was also the source of every problem the PIAT had. The spring was enormous. It had to be. The spigot needed enough force to strike the bomb's propellant charge hard enough to ignite it and send a 3-pound bomb roughly 100 yards. Compressing this spring required approximately 200 pounds of force. For context, That is roughly the weight of a fully grown man. The official reloading procedure was extraordinary. The soldier placed the PIAT's butt plate on the ground. He then lay flat on his back with the weapon pointing upward. He placed both feet on the cocking handle and gripped the weapon's body with both hands. Then he pushed with his legs while pulling with his arms, compressing the spring until it locked into the cocked position. This was physically exhausting for a fit soldier. For a smaller man, or a tired one, or a wounded one, it was sometimes impossible. Reports exist of soldiers attempting to cock the PIAT multiple times, failing, and having to call a second man over to help. Under fire, this process was a nightmare. The weapon was supposed to be self-cocking. The recoil from each shot was meant to push the spigot back far enough to recompress the spring automatically. If it worked, subsequent shots could be fired without the feet on the ground routine. In practice, the self-cocking mechanism was unreliable. Estimates vary, but many veterans reported that it failed roughly half the time. If the soldier flinched during the recoil, or held the weapon at the wrong angle, or if the spring was worn from use, the automatic recocking would not engage. And then there was the recoil itself. When 200 pounds of spring tension released in a fraction of a second, the energy had to go somewhere. It went into the shooter's shoulder. The PIAT's recoil was violent. Multiple veterans compared it to being punched. Hard. Medical reports from the war document fractured collarbones, severe bruising, dislocated shoulders, and at least one case of a soldier being knocked unconscious by the kick. This was not a weapon that encouraged repeated use. Most soldiers fired it as few times as absolutely necessary. And yet, the PIAT had to be used, because the alternative was worse. The PIAT's bomb carried a shaped charge warhead. This was the same principle used in the bazooka and Panzerfaust, a cone of copper surrounded by explosive. When the bomb detonated, the explosive collapsed the copper cone into a superheated jet traveling at enormous velocity. This jet could punch through armor plate like a needle through paper. The PIAT's shaped charge could penetrate approximately 100 millimeters of steel. This was a critical number. The Tiger I had 100 millimeters of frontal armor. A PIAT hitting the front plate of a Tiger was on the edge. It might penetrate, it might not. A gamble. But the Tiger's side armor was 80 millimeters. Its rear armor was thinner still. A PIAT hitting the flank of a Tiger would go through. And once a shaped charge jet enters the interior of a tank, the results are catastrophic. Molten metal and explosive pressure rip through the crew compartment. The Panzer IV, which was the most common German tank, had far less armor. A PIAT could kill a Panzer IV from almost any angle. The Panther's side armor was 40 to 50 millimeters. Easy prey for a PIAT at close range. The problem was that close range meant very close range indeed. The PIAT's official anti-tank range was 100 yards, but accuracy dropped off sharply beyond 50. Most successful engagements happened at 30 yards or less. Some at 15. 15 yards from a Tiger tank. Close enough to hear the engine. Close enough to see individual track links. Close enough that a miss would be the last thing a soldier ever did. This is why the PIAT produced so many acts of extreme bravery. Using it effectively required getting close to something that could kill you instantly. It required nerve, timing, and a willingness to accept that the weapon in your hands might hurt you almost as much as the enemy. 3 men received the Victoria Cross while using the PIAT. Each story is remarkable. The first was Company Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis of the Green Howards. On June 6, 1944, D-Day itself, Hollis's company was advancing inland from Gold Beach. They encountered a German pillbox that was pinning down the advance with machine gun fire. Hollis grabbed a PIAT and charged the position. He fired directly into the pillbox, knocking it out. He then cleared a second position with grenades and his Sten gun. Later the same day, Hollis found himself cut off with 2 of his men. A German field gun was targeting his company. Hollis fired his PIAT at the gun position, providing cover for his men to withdraw. Stanley Hollis was the only man to receive the Victoria Cross for actions on D-Day. He did it carrying the most hated weapon in the British Army. The second was Fusilier Francis Jefferson of the Lancashire Fusiliers. In May 1944, at the Anzio beachhead in Italy, Jefferson's company came under attack from a German Tiger tank supported by infantry. The Tiger was systematically destroying every position in its path. Jefferson took a PIAT and advanced toward the Tiger. Not away from it, toward it, across open ground, under fire. He fired at close range. The first bomb hit, but did not stop the tank. Jefferson cocked the PIAT again. He fired again. The second bomb penetrated. The Tiger caught fire, and the crew bailed out. Jefferson then held his position for the rest of the day, using the PIAT against enemy infantry positions. When his PIAT ammunition ran out, he directed fire from other weapons. Victoria Cross. The third was Private Ernest Alvia Smith of the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada. In October 1944, Smith's company was crossing the Savio River in Italy when German armour counterattacked. A Panther tank and at least 2 self-propelled guns were advancing on the bridgehead. Smith positioned himself in an exposed ditch with a PIAT. He waited until the Panther was at point-blank range and fired. The shaped charge penetrated, and the Panther burst into flames. More armor was coming. Smith continued firing. He knocked out a self-propelled gun. When German infantry moved in, Smith switched to his Thompson submachine gun and fought them off alone. He held the position until reinforcements arrived, protecting the bridgehead that his entire company depended on. Victoria Cross. 3 of the highest awards for bravery in the British and Commonwealth military, all earned by men using a weapon that every soldier wished they could throw in a ditch and forget about. The irony is sharp. The PIAT's terrible characteristics were precisely what made its users so brave. The bazooka could be fired from a safe distance. The Panzerfaust was point and shoot. But the PIAT demanded that its operator get dangerously close, absorb punishing recoil, and potentially wrestle with a 200-pound spring while under fire. Anyone who did that and succeeded was, by definition, extraordinarily courageous. Comparing the PIAT to its rivals reveals something interesting. The American bazooka was more comfortable to fire. It had better range. But its early M6 warhead had serious penetration problems against heavy armor. The upgraded warhead improved things, but the backblast remained a tactical limitation. The German Panzerfaust was devastating. Its warhead could penetrate 200 millimeters of armor. But it was single-use. One shot, and the tube was discarded. A soldier carrying a Panzerfaust got one chance. Miss, and he had nothing. The PIAT was reloadable. A soldier could carry multiple bombs and fire again and again. It had no backblast. It could be used in situations where the bazooka and Panzerfaust could not. On raw specifications, The PIAT was not a bad weapon. Its penetration was adequate, its shaped charge was effective, its no backblast design was a genuine advantage. It was the human experience of using it that was awful. By the end of the war, the PIAT had been used in every theater where British and Commonwealth forces fought. North Africa, Sicily, Italy, Normandy, the Netherlands, Germany. Thousands of armored vehicles, bunkers, machine gun nests, and fortified positions were destroyed by PIAT fire. The weapon that everybody hated had done its job. After the war, the PIAT was retired with almost unseemly speed. Nobody campaigned to keep it. Nobody wrote letters defending it. It was replaced by recoilless rifle systems and eventually by modern anti-tank guided missiles. But the legacy of the PIAT is not really about the weapon itself. It is about what it demanded from the men who used it. In war, soldiers rarely get perfect tools. They get what is available. And what was available to the British infantry in 1944 was a crude metal tube, powered by a spring, that could break bones. They took that tool and used it to stop tigers. Not because it was good, not because they liked it, because it was what they had. And because when a 60-ton tank is coming and there is nothing else, even the worst weapon in the army is better than nothing. The PIAT proves something uncomfortable about warfare. The relationship between the quality of a weapon and the courage required to use it is often inverse. The worse the weapon, the braver the soldier has to be. 3 Victoria Crosses, earned with a piece of spring-loaded scrap that bruised, battered, and occasionally broke the men who fired it. The PIAT was the worst weapon in the British Army, and it might have produced the bravest soldiers. Thank you for watching. If you found this interesting, please subscribe. There are many more stories like this one. Weapons that looked terrible on paper but changed the course of battles. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.